let's head to the Garden right now. I think they're in the Garden. Are they in the Garden, Bree? We'll find out right now. Let's check in with the guys back in New York. Both Kyle Neubeck and Derek Bodner on the scene, checking in to give us the update live from New York of what happened in this game one from the fellas.
Oh, man, we really got to squeeze in here.
Nice and clean. Look at that.
Looking professional. Wow, who are these guys?
By the way, we are decidedly not in the Garden. We had to book it back to the hotel because apparently the good people of Madison Square Garden do not take kindly to you trying to do live hits from the arena after the game.
Wow, look at that. Okay, well, Kyle, Derek. Well, first of all, man, I mean, we'll start right away. We'll get to the B part because he did finish the game, so we'll get to him a little bit later. But as you guys saw on the thumbnail for the show here, out-rebounded. And we discussed this in our preview on Thursday, all three of us, where we talked about that, where the Knicks lead the NBA in offensive rebounding, and they have hurt the Sixers in the season with taking 3 of the 4 games, and that was a big part of that. We highlighted Hartenstein, OG Anunoby. We didn't factor in Mitchell Robinson as much because he hasn't played, but he was a big part of that. Guys, how were they not prepared for this when we knew this would be a big part of the game plan for the New York Knicks?
So some of it, I think, is not being prepared. Some of it is also just the Knicks' strengths playing out against the Sixers' weaknesses, for sure. Like they said after the game, there's not a whole lot you do other than rebound better, more attention to detail, more collective effort, right? Like it's a very simple thing, but the Knicks, the whole brand of basketball, is playing hard, punishing lapses in attention on the glass. And to your point, Devon, I don't know why they were not ready for that. They seemed ready in a lot of other ways, right? Like New York's half-court offense was really bad. If they had been able to actually end possessions, we'd be talking about a defensive masterclass. You slow down Jalen Brunson, you do all kinds of good things. But it's a great example of the thing we talk about all the time in the playoffs, which is every possession matters. And you can't let teams have 2 and 3 and 4 chances. Eventually, even guys like Josh Hart, who is not a good shooter, they're going to make you pay at some point. So it's real unfortunate they let this one get away. I think you probably feel more confident coming out of this game because the rebounding battle was lost like that, because they shot poorly from 3. You'd expect that to go another way in a different game, but it is a little dispiriting to not get that one.
Yeah, and Kyle brought up Josh Hart shooting threes. I'm sure we will get to that in a minute. But look, New York started this game off. I think 9 of their first 11 points were on the offense on second chance points. Like Kyle mentioned, I thought they played really good first shot defense for most of the night. They just got beat to every floorboard. They got beat to every out rebounded muscle play. Outside of, it's strength versus weakness in a very big way. And outside of Joel Embiid, when his mobility isn't 100%, I think rebounding is probably where it takes the biggest hit. But outside of Joel Embiid and Kyle Lowry, they just don't have very many people who really get after it defensively and on the defensive glass. It was infuriating, but I think it was a little bit predictable. Not to this degree. The degree to which they lost rebounding battle was absurd. It is a reason why they were going back or going to game 2 0-1. But I think a lot of it comes down to just personnel, and also when you're in rotation trying to throw a bunch of bodies at Brunson, that tends to be the consequence of that, and they got bit hard.
Can we chalk this bench performance or lack thereof just up to just an outlier? Or is this something that the Knicks are doing with the guys, the Buddy Hields and the Nick Batums to frustrate them on offense? Because the bench gave you nothing today. And if the bench continues to do that, then it's going to be a pretty short series.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you do come into a series and say role players are not guys you generally are going to count on night to night. I do think, to your point, Roy, this is an extreme example of that, right? Like you got, at least for 2.5, 3 quarters, you got a really good Joel Embiid game. And if you get any help from the Oubres, from Tobias, from Buddy, I mean, Lowry played well. So they did get a nice night out of Kyle Lowry. He showed up, and maybe you feel heartened by that. Like he's going to steal them a game at some point by helping out these.
Not to step on your answer here, but Lowry started.
Yeah, you're talking about but expanding into the role players, like even the starter role players did not offer much, right? Like Kelly had some moments on cuts away from Joel, and Tobias did about nothing. So really, even it's beyond the bench. And if you were trying to be a hater or a skeptic, you could say, well, this is the product of the Knicks loading up a little bit at the deadline, right? And pushing some of these guys that maybe were further up the rotation into bench roles, or in the case of a guy like Bogdanovich, that's someone they went out and got. OG Anunoby bolsters the starting lineup. And so you're rounding the team out in different ways. Now, I also think you give credit to Deuce McBride, who he's really come on the last, month or so. And maybe he's not going to score 20 plus points a game, and you would hope that you hold him down. I think the only reason I would be discouraged is, yes, all the bench disparity was what it was, but this is a night that you held down Brunson. Like they did their game plan on Brunson was pretty awesome. Like even Tyrese Maxey held up well against him. They switched pretty freely against him. They weren't necessarily like hard trapping, hard hedging, hard doubling all that often. And they did a good job in solo coverage. So that would be the concern I would have, is Brunson might get going next game. And then if they still get, heavy efforts off the bench, then you might be in some real trouble.
Going back to Kyle's point after I just kind of scolded him for talking about starting players, part of the problem is also that the Sixers didn't really rely on their bench at all. Like outside of Batum, nobody really played any significant minutes. Yeah, you had splashes of Campaign, you had splashes of Buddy Hield, but I think Buddy only played like 11 minutes, Cam a handful. Part of it's because Buddy didn't have anything going offensively. But part of it is that New York just relies on their bench a little bit more, especially with the Bogdanovich addition, whereas the Sixers are a little bit top heavy, in part because they have so many assets they didn't spend at the trade deadline, in part because they are just trying to react still to the James Harden situation. There's another shoe to drop, but this is a very top heavy team, very top 6 or 7 heavy team. And when one of those bench players doesn't have anything going, and I actually thought Paul Reed gave them some pretty good minutes, especially in the first half. Just you're not going to look for Paul Reed to score when you're 2 scorers off the bench. I mean, look, it's hard to complain too much because Batum just did practically save your season 48 hours ago. But Buddy didn't give you much of anything, and Batum had an off night, and their role players are just flawed enough where that's going to happen every now and then.
By the way, guys, let me formally introduce you to Jack. While you guys
what's up, guys?
Nice to meet you, Jack. Thank you so much for filling in admirably while we're on the road.
Thanks for letting me borrow
and for teaching that guy a little bit about basketball along the way too.
All right, let's get to the big fella. Looked really good in the first half until everything happened with the injury. We had 2:49 in the second quarter. What was the update after the game and of what they actually laid out? Because we already had a super chat ticked off that it was what was it, Roy? Knee?
Yeah, what was the knee issues or something?
Yeah,
something a very generic update about
the tweaked knee.
Yeah. Tweaked knee. There you go.
Yeah. Jake M is pissed off that they called it a tweaked knee. So what's the update on Joel?
Okay, so I'm going to share something on the show that we haven't tweeted, shared out yet. So Derek and I divided and conquered in post-game festivities. So while Derek was at the post-game podium for Kyle Lowry, I hung around in the locker room. And as we're waiting for guys to get ready, Joel Embiid comes sauntering out of the shower with just a towel and a pair of sunglasses on. And so that was just that was a little bit weird. And then, I'll say this, I'm not going to get deep into, everything he said because he was not available to the media. He's just kind of hanging out. He seemed in pretty good spirits to me, did not seem like a guy who, I think the instant reaction I had, and certainly people who heard from us that he wasn't talking tonight, was they're trying to hide something and he's really hurt and what have you. I did not get that read from how he carried himself in the locker room. Now, don't take that as me saying he's fine and he's just going to play Monday and he's going to be good for the series. But I would say if I was a not even a betting man, a guessing man, that I think he's going to be mostly okay, that was a scary moment that hopefully we'll look back on and he will rally from that rather than have to miss a game or miss parts of the series. Too early to tell yet, but that's my bit of positive, I wouldn't even say news, positive speculation, we can say.
So if you were
I think
Jonte Porter, you would think that Joe
Look, it's okay if we bet. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not that on the team.
Journalistic ethics. I don't know
Make sure
about
you go to the Bet Parks app, right?
No, I mean, look, obviously the key is going to be how it responds tomorrow. Is there any kind of swelling? Is there any kind of pain tomorrow? Right now, to Kyle's point, I was in the press conferences, so I didn't see that interaction. Based on what Kyle said, though, it seems like the first indication is positive, but it always comes back to the next day.
By the way, the first thing, of course, we checked your tweets because you guys were coming through quicker here in the studio of what was happening when he came back on the floor for the start of the second half. Then the other piece, Derek, was when I looked at the television, like me, you always talk about with the knee brace, him tugging on and all that. Then I didn't see a knee brace.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have a better vantage point of that than I mean. We're pretty far away. I cannot tell you all the wrinkles in
He did
his.
not have the knee. And when it got closer, I saw that it looked like it was the compression sleeve that he had under the longer tights that he usually wears. So he didn't even have the knee brace on, or the bigger knee brace. It just looked like the compression sleeve. And I know we've talked about this too when I tore my ACL and how I had the same brace. And then I had that other compression sleeve that they wear. It looked like, at least underneath that one, something similar to what I have. So something else to pay attention to if and when he does play on Monday.
And I did see some speculation on social media. So to Derek's point, a lot of people watching on TV in terms of seeing braces and things like that probably could see better than us. I saw some speculation that maybe there was some blood around the knee at some point during the game, and that people were trying to put together that maybe that was the brace pinch somewhere, and maybe that was the problem rather than any kind of structural issue. Again, way too early to say.
Yes.
We'll be at practice tomorrow, I think around noon or so, and we'll have a better understanding by then.
Yeah, so you had something. Yeah, so the other part, of course, is you got a Nico Batum game tonight from Kyle Lowry with his offensive production. Tyrese Maxey leads all scorers with 33 and Embiid 29. How else can they continue? We talk about the Tobias Harris piece all the time, and I mean, we're just beating the same drum all over again. And what do we hear? What do we? He finished.
He's a beaten man.
I mean, so are they.
He's a broken and beaten man. He knows.
I'm like, why is he on the floor in the closing minutes, guys? Again.
Derek would tell you. I think I said multiple times tonight to send him to the moon during the game. So that probably tells you where I'm at with him and how he's played. I think. Look, at least he rebounded tonight. He's one of the few guys who actually did that. But
it just didn't seem like anyone rebounded.
Roy doesn't want to hear it.
He has 9, but man, it just didn't seem like anyone rebounded.
No, I completely agree with you. It feels like a pretty hollow 9.
Yeah,
and not a lot of like, oh man, he's going into traffic and pulling one down. It's like, hey, that uncontested one, he's. Westbrook had the triple-double season, and there was a lot of people arguing like, oh, he's taking rebounds from people. It felt like more of those.
Well, and also, he might have had 9, but I'm pretty sure one of them was on the turnover on the outlet pass, so that doesn't even count. I'm not giving him credit for that.
Yeah, like, look, to me, and Devon, we've talked about this on the show, I have just written off the idea of, like, you're going to get him going, right? Like, the idea is that, oh, you're going to run more pick and rolls, you're going to do this, and it's like, okay, but maybe you get him going, but he's not creating for others out of those looks. He's not getting the open shots for Tyrese, Kyle, Nico, Buddy, whoever it might be, Kelly. And so I'd just rather it go elsewhere. I do think, you mentioned Maxey a little bit earlier. I do think they fell into some good stuff in the second half where they were able to pretty routinely force switches. They got, Hartenstein or Robinson or some of these guys who can't keep up with him in space. So he's getting by them. And then once you get by them on the perimeter, you just got to beat, like Josh Hart or somebody like that at the rim. And so that's something that I think they will go back to. And that's going to be really important in the non-Embiid minutes, right? Because Tyrese's best minutes all night were with Joel. What they need from him is to take that leap and be who he was in the regular season at the start of fourth and the start of second quarters, where not only were they able to maintain leads, they were able to build leads. And that was what killed them tonight.
Derek, what are you looking for? Game 2, early preview. Of course, you guys are going to be writing PHLY, allphly.com. Go check the guys' stuff out there. What are you looking for Game 2?
Rebound the damn ball. It's not. This isn't all that complicated of a one to clean up here.
And make open threes. How about that too?
And not only did rebounding the ball give them second chance points, and I can't imagine how many they ended up with on the night. Like I said, I think they had 16 at halftime. It feels like they probably got at least that many there down the stretch. But also they just didn't have a chance to run. The Sixers had moments where they struggled in the half court, certainly in the second quarter. But the way you rectify that is you get out and run, and they had no chance to run because they couldn't rebound the darn ball. I think problem A, B, and C start off there.
27-11 fast break points in favor of New York after their 23-9 offensive rebounding advantage there as well. So you're right.
23. Whew.
Yeah.
And look, that's part of why the Knicks are a really tough team, right? They win the margins. They do everything they possibly can, value the basketball. They chase offensive rebounds as hard as they possibly can. They keep their defensive structure. They don't have a lot of gamblers. And the few times they did gamble tonight, Dante DiVincenzo got caught probably 2 or 3 times at least cheating toward Joel Embiid, and Joel made good passes to set guys up. So they're not a team that plays outside of themselves, right? It's a very slow, methodical, disciplined basketball team. And so the Sixers have to go in understanding that. And from the beginning of the game, you have to find bodies. Like even if you're not the guy getting the rebound, you can't let OG Anunoby and Josh Hart and all these guys just run to the rim without even, a shoulder, a hip, whatever. You got to hit them somehow and dislodge these guys.
Cal's about to shoulder me in the face while he's making
Listen, I want to go out there and put 2 fucking hands on the ball, man. I'm sick of watching he's just lazy, just like waving your arm at rebounds. Like that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Yo, is there
we've
room
had
to
plenty
tweak
of conversations
this
about his
lineup?
rebounding.
Good.
I'm sorry. Is there room to tweak this lineup? Like, I think Kyle Lowry played great, right? But maybe his energy off the bench could be helpful. Because he kind of got nothing off the bench. So maybe him coming off the bench could be helpful. But who do you start? Do you start Batum and just be a little bigger? Maybe does that help on the rebounding? Do you start Paul Reed? And just because Paul Reed's quick, he's a quick mobile guy. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Is there room for it, or do they need that veteran leadership from Kyle Lowry to start the game as compared?
Well,
to
I think 2 problems. First, I think Kyle gave them a pretty good shot there to start the third quarter, and part of the reason they got back in that game. So I think that extra ball handler helps that lineup. But I also think Nick wants at least one big wing out there to put on Brunson pretty much at all times. Kelly drew that assignment for a large chunk of the start of the game, and then when Batum came in, he drew that assignment at times as well. So I think they want to stagger Batum and Kelly to make sure they have one of those big wings to throw at Brunson. So I would be surprised if they make a change to the starting lineup. Not impossible, because I think when we get to the playoffs, Nick will throw pretty much anything at them to see if something can swing the series. But I think right now they'll probably stick with what they have.
And to your point, I think it'd probably be easier to consider an adjustment if anybody off the bench had played well, right? Like if Batum had come in and played like he did the other night, maybe not 6 threes or 20 points in the second half, whatever. But if he had come in and played like he did the other night, then you say, okay, we're going to get some value out of him in the starting lineup. You get the value out of Kyle as that, kind of bench captain sort of guy. I always get concerned when it's Tyrese and he's the only real ball handler out there. And it's part of why I do like him and Kyle playing together. But it is a big challenge because I don't trust Campaign a whole lot. He played very sparingly tonight. In theory, he could be another ball handler, somebody to steady things off the bench, but he was only playing a few minutes here and there, and I think he would have a tough time defensively in this series. So, as Derek said, I think Nick Nurse will consider almost anything, but I do think he really likes that Maxey and Lowry combination in the starting lineup.
All right. I lied about the final one. Kelly Oubre, you bring him up. The tweet from our show account at PHLY_Sixers on Friday while you guys were at practice went nuts, especially with the Knicks fans, including Ben Stiller, Jerry Ferrara, also known as Turtle from Entourage, and many, many, many basketball people alike. How did Knicks fans, the crowd, react to Kelly Oubre? Really?
I just want to say one thing, because Kyle has been like, oh my God, I can't believe everyone's making a big deal about this one part of the quote when there's all this other nice things he said about New York. Well, there's a reason you highlighted that part of the quote in the tweet, Kyle. You knew it was going to get the reaction.
So we were kind of waiting for when they announced starting lineups, like, oh, let's see how hard he gets booed.
They didn't care.
And it reminded me, like, the people who get mad on the internet are a very small percentage of any fan base, especially people who are going to the games. I don't think there was basically no difference between how they treated him or Paul Reed for that matter, which to me, Paul Reed was the guy who I expected to get all kinds of, because he's coming in here, he's on a national podcast being like, yeah, we wanted to play them. They're the weaker team. It's like, whoa, buddy, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, that's funny. But I mean, look, man, as you said, Derek, rebound the damn ball. We might be talking about something different for game 2. Fellas, everybody out there, make sure you go read allphly.com. Die Hard stuff there, of course, to check out their work while they're on the road. This is what we bring you. The guys go on the road for these playoff series. Hopefully this is not the only one. This is just the start of things for the 76ers, but they have to play much better in game 2 and, of course, going forward. Kyle, Derek, thanks so much, man. We'll catch up with you on Monday following game 2 at the Garden. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, sir, and thank you. It's good to leave the show in capable hands, so thank you all for holding down the fort without us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it, man. Again, Kyle Neubeck, Derek Bodner, live from New York.
We all silly like the mayor.